The courtroom in Savannah grows still as the judge's gavel cracks against the wooden block. Ezekiel Zeke Thompson, a 78-year-old hero of World War II, sits in handcuffs, his silver hair catching the dim light. Outside, voices chant for justice, their cries piercing the heavy air. In 10 minutes, an armored car will arrive, carrying General Abigail Harper, with a truth hidden for 80 years. Will she reach Zeke in time to stop the greatest injustice of his life? If you believe heroes deserve honor, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment 1 if you think Zeke will be saved, or 2 if you fear the system will fail him. Share this story to keep truth alive. 3 weeks earlier, Zeke sat alone at Coastal Brew, a quiet cafe on Savannah's cobblestone streets. The retired teacher, known for mentoring local kids, wore his faded army cap beside a neatly folded newspaper. His weathered hands cradled a steaming coffee, his posture steady despite his age. The cafe hummed softly, a haven for early risers. Zeke's routine was simple, a life of service carried into his twilight years, his humility masking a past of courage that few could imagine. At Coastal Brew, Ezekiel Zeke Thompson sat in his usual booth, the morning light glinting off Savannah's cobblestone streets. The 78-year-old veteran, his silver hair neatly trimmed, wore a pressed shirt and khakis, his army cap resting beside a folded Savannah Herald. His scarred hands, steady from years of service, held a steaming coffee. Zeke's quiet presence drew nods from regulars who knew him as Professor Zeke, the man who taught history to neighborhood kids for free. Decades ago, in World War II, he'd turned down honors for his bravery at Normandy, saying he only did his duty. Now, he read about local veterans' events with the same focus he once gave to enemy lines through a sniper's scope. The cafe's soft chatter wrapped around him, a sanctuary of routine he'd cherished for 15 years. If you think a hero's humility deserves respect, comment 1 below, or 2, if you believe recognition matters more. Hit that like button to honor those who serve silently, and subscribe for stories that reveal the truth behind courage. The bell above Coastal Brew's door jangled harshly as 3 young men staggered in, their laughter loud and sloppy from a night soaked in liquor. Kyle Bennett, a 20-year-old with slicked-back hair and a smug grin, led the pack. Ryan Holt and Ethan Walsh, both 19, trailed behind, their expensive jackets reeking of whiskey and smoke. They collapsed into a booth near Ezekiel Zeke Thompson, who looked up from his Savannah Herald, his steady eyes taking in the disturbance. Kyle's voice sliced through the cafe's quiet hum. "Look at this old black guy hogging space," he jeered, loud enough for all to hear. Regulars glanced over, uneasy, but stayed silent. Rosa Alvarez, the waitress who'd poured Zeke's coffee for years, shot him an apologetic look, but kept wiping the counter. Zeke folded his newspaper neatly and spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Gentlemen, please keep it down so everyone can enjoy their morning." Kyle's face flushed with anger, his ego bruised. "You threatening us, old man?" he bellowed, yanking out his phone to call 911. "Help! There's a dangerous black man at Coastal Brew threatening to hurt us." His voice dripped with fake panic. Rosa stepped forward. "That's not what happened," she said, but Kyle ignored her, his call already connected. Within 4 minutes, sirens screamed outside, red and blue lights flashing through the cafe's windows. 2 police officers burst through the door, hands on their holsters scanning the room. Their eyes locked on Zeke, the only black man present, and their posture shifted to one of authority. "That's him!" Kyle pointed dramatically, his finger jabbing toward Zeke, who sat still, hands visible on the table. "He said he'd make us disappear." Zeke had said no such thing, but the officers didn't ask for his side. Officer Thomas Reed, a burly man with a stern jaw, approached Zeke's booth. "Stand up. "Hands behind your back," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Zeke rose slowly, his dignity unbroken, but the cold steel of handcuffs bit into his wrists as Reed snapped them shut. Rosa tried again. "Officers, Zeke didn't threaten anyone." These boys were drunk and rude, but Officer Sarah Klein waved her off. "Ma'am, step back. We've got witnesses." Those witnesses were Kyle, Ryan, and Ethan, whose lies carried more weight than the truth. As the officers led Zeke toward the squad car, his army cap fell to the cafe floor, landing beside his newspaper. The headline read, "Savannah honors local veterans." The irony stung as Zeke, a man who'd served his country, was treated like a criminal. If you believe Zeke was unjustly targeted, comment 1 below, or 2 if you think the young men were right. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how this injustice unfolds. The Savannah courthouse hummed with tension as Ezekiel Zeke Thompson sat at the defense table, his silver hair stark against the orange jumpsuit. The jury, drawn from suburban voter rolls, eyed him warily, their faces etched with doubt. Prosecutor Margaret Evans, her gray suit crisp, stepped forward, her voice sharp and deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen, Zeke Thompson, trained as a sniper in World War II, turned his deadly skills on 3 young men at Coastal Brew, threatening their lives." Her words twisted Zeke's heroism into menace, framing him as a ticking threat. Margaret, eyeing a city council seat, wielded the case to burnish her tough-on-crime image, her campaign ads already touting safety first. Kyle Bennett took the stand, his eyes glistening with practiced tears. "He stared at us like we were in his crosshairs," he lied, claiming Zeke vowed to teach us respect with violence. Ryan Holt and Ethan Walsh backed him, their testimonies aligned, claiming Zeke's calm request was a veiled threat. Officer Thomas Reed followed, his badge lending weight to falsehoods. "Thompson's silence felt calculated, like he was sizing us up," Reed said, inflating Zeke's composure into aggression. Defense attorney Clara Mitchell, her briefcase stuffed with hasty notes, rose to object, but Judge Harold Vance cut her off. "Move along, Miss Mitchell," he said, his tone impatient. Clara, young and swamped with cases, called Rosa Alvarez, the Coastal Brew waitress who'd seen it all. Rosa's voice shook. Zeke was polite, just asked them to quiet down. But Margaret pounced, probing Rosa's immigration status with a sly smile. "You're not documented, are you, Ms. Alvarez?" The jury shifted, their trust in Rosa waning. Clara's plea to introduce Zeke's military record, proof of his valor at Normandy, was shot down. "Irrelevant," Vance ruled, silencing a truth that could have swayed hearts. Outside, protesters' chants of justice for Zeke barely pierced the thick walls, their signs ignored by the jury, scribbling notes. Margaret's closing argument sealed the narrative. "This veteran chose intimidation over honor, endangering our community. You must hold him accountable." Her words, laced with righteous fury, drowned Clara's faltering defense, which leaned on Zeke's character, but lacked evidence the court allowed. Zeke sat unmoved, his hands steady despite the cuffs, his eyes fixed on a distant point. The trial had become a stage, with Channel 7 flashing Zeke's mugshot beside Kyle's yearbook smile. Naomi, Zeke's daughter, sat in the gallery, her fists clenched, as her father's legacy was shredded. Every attempt to highlight Zeke's decades of teaching, his free history classes for Savannah's kids, was blocked by Vance's gavel. Margaret's witnesses faced no scrutiny, their lies weaving a tale of terror that buried the truth. Kyle's father, a real estate tycoon, sat smugly, his influence shielding his son's past, dropped charges for brawls and drunken antics. The jury, swayed by Margaret's polish, seemed to see Zeke as the prosecution did, a black veteran whose service was a liability, not a virtue. Clara's final plea, rushed and thin, couldn't pierce the fog of bias. "Zeke Thompson is no threat," she said, her voice cracking. But the jury's faces, hardened by days of lies, offered no hope. Zeke, who'd faced Nazi fire without flinching, felt the weight of a different enemy now, a system that saw his skin before his soul. Naomi's eyes met his, her pain mirroring his own, but he gave her a slight nod, a soldier's assurance that he'd endure. The protesters outside grew louder, their voices a faint echo of the justice Zeke still believed in, somewhere deep within. If you think this trial served justice, comment 1 below, or 2, if you believe Zeke was betrayed. Like and subscribe to follow this battle for a hero's honor. Clara Mitchell faced Ezekiel Zeke Thompson in the stark interview room at Savannah's county jail, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. The young lawyer's briefcase sagged with notes, but her voice carried defeat. "Mr. Thompson," the prosecution's story held firm, "and the judge barred your military record. We're outmatched." Zeke, in his orange jumpsuit, nodded, his silver hair glinting under a flickering bulb. His hands, scarred from Normandy's battles, rested calmly. "Ms. Mitchell, you've given your all. That's enough for me." Clara admitted her limits. She hadn't probed Kyle Bennett's past, littered with hushed-up charges, or caught the police report's gaps. She'd wanted more witnesses, but Judge Harold Vance capped her at 2. Rosa Alvarez, Coastal Brew's waitress, had promised to testify. Zeke was kind, never threatening, Rosa had said, but a late-night call about her immigration status silenced her. "Someone threatened my family," she whispered to Clara, backing out. James Carter, once a student in Zeke's free history classes, also withdrew after his employer hinted at repercussions for joining a divisive case. Clara's frustration boiled, but Zeke's steady gaze anchored her. "Truth will find its way, Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice rich with the wisdom of a man who'd seen war's end. That night, in his cell, Zeke sat on a thin cot, a worn Bible open under the ceiling's faint glow. The jail's clatter, slamming doors, muffled shouts, faded as he read. He thought of Naomi, his daughter, who'd driven from Atlanta, her savings drained by visits. "Dad, let's get a better lawyer," she'd urged. But Zeke refused. "Save your money, honey. This fight's mine." He'd taught Savannah's kids about justice and equality for decades, but now, staring at peeling walls, he questioned if those lessons held weight in a world that judged his skin first. The prosecution's lies cut deep, branding him a threat for a simple request to quiet down. Yet Zeke's spirit held firm, forged in Normandy's fire. He wouldn't yield to despair. Clara, shaken by the trial's bias, felt her faith in the law waver, but Zeke's words echoed, "I've seen darkness before, and light always follows." His calm, a soldier's resolve, kept her fighting, though hope seemed thin. Naomi's letters, tucked beside his Bible, spoke of protests growing outside, of veterans rallying for him. Zeke read them slowly, each word a reminder of the America he'd bled for. He closed his eyes, picturing his students' faces, their hunger for truth, and vowed to endure for them. The system saw a black veteran as dangerous, but Zeke knew his truth was unshakable. He'd faced worse odds and won. If you think Zeke should push harder or stay patient, comment 1 for fight, 2 for patience below. Like and subscribe to see how his resolve faces this storm. The Savannah courthouse stilled as Judge Harold Vance's gavel fell, its echo sharp. Ezekiel Zeke Thompson stood, hands cuffed, as the verdict rang out. "On terroristic threatening in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty," said jury foreman Robert Ellis, his voice flat. Zeke's eyes narrowed, a flicker of pain beneath his calm. On disturbing the peace, guilty. Naomi, in the gallery, choked back a sob, her hands gripping the bench. Across the aisle, Kyle Bennett's mother smiled, her son's lies now law. Prosecutor Margaret Evans, her city council campaign soaring, faced reporters outside. "Savannah is safer tonight," she proclaimed, painting Zeke as a menace. Judge Vance set sentencing for next week, but Zeke's fate was sealed. A 78-year-old World War II hero, branded a felon. Deputies led him through a murmuring crowd, their eyes mixed with pity and scorn. Channel 7's vans lined up, blasting veteran guilty of threats. Zeke's mugshot stark beside Kyle's polished grin. The ride to Coastal Pines Jail took 15 minutes. Officers Thomas Reed and Sarah Klein eyeing Zeke warily. "He's too quiet," Reed muttered, suspicion in his glance. At the jail, Zeke's wallet, holding $32 and Naomi's photo, was bagged with his army cap. Bail, set at $75,000, mocked his veteran's pension. In his cell, paint flaking from the walls, Zeke lay on a thin cot, the jail's hum stirring memories of Normandy's chaos. He thought of his students, their lessons on the Constitution, and wondered if the America he'd fought for saw him at all. Naomi's cries lingered in his mind, but despair found no foothold. He'd stared down death before. This was just another fight. Protesters massed outside the courthouse, their signs, "Free Zeke," "Honor Heroes," waving in vain. The jury, swayed in under 2 hours, had bought Margaret's tale. A black veteran was no patriot, only a threat. Zeke's service, his decades teaching Savannah's kids, meant nothing to them, yet he held fast, his dignity a shield against the lies that caged him. He'd endured war's horrors. He could bear this betrayal. If you believe Zeke's trial was unjust, comment 1 below, or 2 if you think the verdict stood. Like and subscribe to follow this hero's fight against a system that failed him. At Coastal Pines Jail, Ezekiel "Zeke" Thompson woke daily at 5:30 a.m., his military discipline unbroken despite the gray walls and iron bars. The cell block's clang of doors and distant shouts filled the air, but Zeke moved with quiet purpose, making his narrow bunk with crisp precision. His cellmate, Jamal Carter, a 25-year-old serving time for theft, watched him with curiosity. "What did they pin on you, old man?" Jamal asked one evening. Zeke, folding a borrowed library book, replied softly, "They say I threatened some kids at a cafe. Truth is, I just asked them to hush." Jamal snorted. "Man, they'll lock us up for existing." Learning Zeke was a World War II sniper shifted Jamal's tone to respect. Word spread fast through the prison's whispered network. The old man in D Block had fought Nazis, saved lives, then taught kids history for free. Soon, even hardened inmates nodded to Zeke in the chow hall. He spent mornings tutoring younger prisoners, helping them earn GEDs, his patients earning their trust. Letters began arriving, first a trickle, then dozens, from veterans across America who'd heard of his plight. A note from a Korean War vet in Texas read, "Brother, your service ain't forgotten. We're fighting for you." Zeke read each one under his cell's dim bulb, their words a lifeline against despair. His leg, scarred from a Normandy blast, throbbed worse in the damp jail, but he hid the pain, standing tall during counts. Naomi sent books, her letters, urging him to hold on, though her savings dwindled from visiting. Zeke wrote back, "Don't worry, honey. I've seen darker days." He thought of his students, their eager faces learning about freedom, and clung to the hope that truth would outlast lies. The prison's routine, meals, lockdowns, fleeting yard time, tested him, but Zeke's dignity held firm. He'd survived war's chaos. He could endure this. Veterans groups rallied online, their posts calling his conviction a disgrace. If you think Zeke's strength proves heroes never break, comment 1 below, or 2 if you believe his humility cost him justice. Like and subscribe to see how this warrior faces the shadows. The Savannah Tribune's newsroom buzzed late into the night, where Lena Brooks, a seasoned investigative journalist, pored over court documents. Her desk lamp cast a warm glow on Kyle Bennett's file, revealing dropped charges for public intoxication and a hushed-up fight at a frat party. Lena's pen scratched notes, connecting dots others missed. Kyle's father, a local real estate mogul, had pulled strings to keep his son's record clean. Ryan Holt and Ethan Walsh had similar histories, privileged young men shielded by wealth. Lena's article, "Who Really Threatened Whom at Coastal Brew," hit newsstands, sparking whispers across Savannah. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Naomi Thompson's phone rang, the caller ID showing a DC number. "This is General Abigail Harper, U.S. Army," a firm voice said. "Your father saved my father's life at Normandy in 1944. I just saw Lena's story." Harper, 55, had uncovered declassified files proving Ezekiel "Zeke" Thompson's heroism. As a young sniper, Zeke had held off a German platoon, saving 40 American soldiers, including Harper's father. His Medal of Honor nomination was buried due to racial bias in the 1940s military. "I'm bringing those files to Savannah," Harper vowed. Naomi's heart raced, hope flickering after months of despair. Lena's reporting gained traction, with veterans groups amplifying her work online. The NAACP took notice, assigning lawyers to review Zeke's case. At Coastal Pines Jail, Zeke heard rumors of the article from a guard's radio, his cellmate Jamal grinning. "They're starting to see you, Pops." Zeke nodded, unsure but clinging to faith. Harper's files, detailing Zeke's precision under fire, were a bombshell waiting to detonate. Social media buzzed with "Howard justice for Zeke," and protests swelled outside the courthouse. Lena uncovered more. A text from Kyle to Ryan, joking about teaching the old man a lesson. The truth was clawing its way free, but Zeke in his cell knew nothing of the storm brewing. He read a veteran's letter, its words urging him to stand tall. If you believe truth can overcome lies, comment 1 below, or 2 if you think the system will resist. Like and subscribe to witness the fight for a hero's honor. The Savannah courthouse brimmed with anticipation as General Abigail Harper strode to the witness stand, her uniform adorned with ribbons, her voice, steady and commanding, gripped the packed room. "Ezekiel Thompson saved 40 American lives at Normandy in 1944, she declared, presenting declassified files. The documents detailed Zeke's sniper fire, holding off a German platoon, his Medal of Honor nomination buried by racial prejudice. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Kyle Bennett, under FBI scrutiny, cracked, his voice trembling as he confessed. "We lied about Mr. Thompson. He only asked us to be quiet. We were drunk, angry, and thought no one would believe him." Ryan Holt and Ethan Walsh nodded, their fabricated stories collapsing. Judge Harold Vance, his face grim, had no choice. "All charges against Ezekiel Thompson are dismissed with prejudice," he ruled, his gavel striking as cheers erupted. Outside, thousands chanted Zeke's name, veterans saluting as cameras rolled. At Coastal Pines Jail, Zeke stepped into sunlight, his orange jumpsuit traded for a pressed shirt. Naomi rushed to him, their embrace a beacon of relief. Channel 7's headline shifted. "War Hero Vindicated." Kyle's public apology, tearful and halting, sparked debate online. Some called for forgiveness, others demanded accountability. Zeke, silent on the matter, thanked Harper, his eyes conveying a soldier's bond. The veterans of foreign wars hailed his release, demanding justice reform. Social media exploded with #JusticeForZeke, trending nationwide. Zeke's quiet dignity, unbroken by 18 months of lies, shone brighter than ever. If you'd forgive Kyle's apology, comment 1 below, or 2 if you believe he must face consequences. Like and subscribe to see how this hero's story reshapes a nation's conscience. In the White House Rose Garden, sunlight bathed Ezekiel Zeke Thompson as President Williams draped the Congressional Medal of Honor over his shoulders. "Zeke embodies America's heart," the president said, his voice warm with reverence. The 78-year-old veteran stood quietly, his silver hair a crown of resilience. Normandy's survivors, frail but proud, wept, their rescuer finally honored. Naomi, Zeke's daughter, glowed in the front row, her faith in justice reborn. Back in Savannah, Zeke launched the Thompson Justice Fund, channeling $14 million from his wrongful conviction settlement to aid veterans facing false charges. The Savannah Herald's headline sang, "Hero's Legacy Sparks Reform," detailing scholarships for justice advocates. At Savannah State, renamed the Thompson History Center, Zeke's lectures drew throngs eager to hear a living legend. He spoke softly, urging all to listen before judging, a lesson carved from 18 months of pain. Cornerstone Church, once wary, now hosted a scholarship in his name, their apology a step toward healing. Coastal Brew bore a plaque, in honor of Ezekiel Thompson, American hero. A young lawyer approached Zeke there, eyes bright. "Your fight changed me," she said. Zeke nodded, his voice gentle. "Truth takes time, child." His fund's first grants reached veterans nationwide, ensuring no hero would face injustice alone. Public outcry over Zeke's ordeal fueled reform, with Congress debating the Veterans Justice Act to curb biased prosecutions. Savannah's streets buzzed with pride, Zeke's story, a beacon for change. He read the Herald daily, its pages tracking his fund's impact, each article a testament to truth's slow victory. His eyes, weathered by war and betrayal, held hope for a fairer America. He thought of Normandy, of students he'd taught, and knew his fight wasn't over. Zeke's humility, once a shadow, now lit a path for others. If you believe Zeke's story shows truth triumphs, comment 1 below, or 2 if reform still beckons. Like, subscribe, and share to honor heroes like Zeke, whose sacrifices demand our vigilance. Together, let's champion justice for all.